Now next there's Professor X, and from a casting standpoint, you could not have gotten a better pick than Patrick Stewart for the role of the X-Men's wheelchair-bound mentor. And exactly as you would expect from Patrick Stewart, he does very well in all three movies. Now in the second movie he gets kidnapped and kind of pushed into the background for a lot of the story, but this was very important. It gave the rest of the team a chance to function without him, which was a really important point of development for the team in my mind, and it was handled really well. In the third movie, we get some glimpses into his past life and some of the ethical compromises he's had to make over his life. And these plot points end up being some of the better stuff in the third movie. But I have to say that I like the portrayal of his character in the first movie the best, and it's because of his interaction with the character of Magneto. The interactions between these two is really fascinating to watch. You can tell that they know each other extremely well, and for all of their disagreements, they do really view each other as equals. They have all these amazing discussions about their different approaches to humanity. The best one in my mind being the one at the very end of the first movie that takes place inside Magneto's plastic prison. They're playing this game of chess as they talk, with Magneto eventually conceding at the end by knocking over his own king. It's a really fantastic you win this round, old friend kind of moment that seems to suggest that these two view their conflict as sort of a battle of wits or a game of strategy between the two, which really adds a whole new interesting layer to the characters. And finally we come to Wolverine, who is pretty important in these comparisons because if anyone in these movies is the main character, it's Wolverine. The movie's overarching story is mainly about him, but we'll get into that more when we discuss plot. For now, we'll focus on him as a character. Now, of all the different X-Men in these movies, Wolverine has probably the most definite journey to go on. From being accepted as a true X-Man, to figuring out what's really important to him, to getting some resolution with his love for Jean Grey. Now, why he loves Jean Grey is kind of beyond me, but redheads are hot. When we're introduced to him in the first movie, we see him as he has been for a long time. As a drifter, being basically alone and knowing nothing about himself or his past. He has no allegiances to anyone or anything other than himself, and he lives on this fragile line between sort of soft-spoken, gruff man and this animalistic, feral monster. To me, this is the shining theme of Wolverine's overall character. The struggle between his human side and his animal side. At this early point, we can see that he has very little control over his animalistic tendencies because he has been so utterly alone for so very long. Not only does he lack any sense of companionship, he's also alone even in his own mind. Because he has no idea who he is or where he comes from or what his past is. That is an entirely new level of aloneness, and Jackman portrays it fantastically. And given his loneliness, this animalistic side is a lot more sympathetic. Especially when you consider that his animalistic side is not only portrayed in this feral savage way, but in other ways as well. Whenever he's defending Rogue, he comes off very much like a parent animal protecting its young, which really helps enhance the affection that he has for Rogue. Another great portrayal of this animal side of him is when he first wakes up in the X-Mansion. He sneaks around and is very jumpy, sort of like a scared, nervous dog. He's slow to trust the people around him, and it takes him a while to get used to not only having a home, but having people to share that home with as well. I really love this portion of his journey a lot, but we do have 2 more films to cover. In the first movie, they introduce this element of Wolverine's lost past, which ends up becoming a big point in the second movie. The way they handle it is actually really compelling. Instead of outright revealing Wolverine's past, they simply give him a way in which he can find out what his past is. This puts the choice and control in Wolverine's hands, and in the movie he has to make a choice between his old life and his new life. He has to decide whether finding out about his past and where he comes from is more important to him than moving forward with his life and becoming a part of Xavier's mission. Ultimately, he makes the choice, of course, to move forward, which ends up being a really poignant point of character development for him. So now that he's overcome his anger and his past, it's left for the third movie to have him overcome his love for Jean. This is where the character really suffers. Because not only does Wolverine stop acting like a team member for most of the movie, he also just reverts back to his animalistic tendencies for a lot of it too. In pursuit of Jean, he almost destroys everything that he's been working towards. And all of it falls completely flat because of how unlikable Jean is in the series. So I personally have to give this one again to the first movie. The relationship between Wolverine and Rogue is the strongest in the first movie, and I'm also a really big fan of the animal versus human struggle. So with the combined tag team awesomeness of Wolverine and Professor Xavier, the first movie wins the point for main heroes. Tomorrow we'll be putting the movie's supporting heroes under the microscope, so make sure to come on back.